name is K Slash, and welcome to another video. And I know it's been a while because I've been chilling at home, eating sunflower seeds, going shooting, and I'm just playing. Sorry, I choked on a sunflower seed. And I've been staying at home playing some games, playing the new Doom Eternal. Super fun, by the way. You guys should buy that. You guys should totally buy that. And today we're gonna react to some very scurry things. Very scurry, very scurry. You don't know how much scurry this is. It's very scurry. So today we're gonna be watching I'm a Cop, and I keep getting called to the same house. Creepypasta, scary stories. Let's get right into it.
I'm a local rookie cop in a small town in Pennsylvania, currently stuck working night shift. I work the normal patrol shift, driving around, pulling traffic, responding to the normal domestic disputes and whatever other wonderful calls dispatch sends my way. But ever since this past weekend, every single night I've been getting called to the same house.
Why?
At first, I thought it was my coworkers playing pranks on the rookie. I have 2 years on the job, but in such a small town, I work with most guys my dad's age. I've omitted certain names and addresses for obvious reasons. Anyway, here's what's happened. Friday night, around 0200, so basically Saturday morning, dispatch gets over the radio. Dispatch to 1034? 1034, go ahead. We just got a 911 hang-up from a landline that's coming back to Patch Lane. Can you check it out? And 10-4, en route. So I immediately started driving to the address, which was about 6 miles away. But it's a pretty rural area, so I get there in less than 10 minutes. I turn right on the gravel lane, and after about 7 seconds, I see the house up ahead on the right. No lights on inside. I park my cruiser on the gravel lane, lights off so as not to announce myself in case there's an actual emergency going on inside.
Yeah,
We're trained to not just roll up to a house, lights on, in case the subject decides to ambush the officer arriving with gunfire.
Makes sense.
Anyway, I quietly approach the old farmhouse and check the perimeter. No signs of anything. No lights, no sound. Not even a car parked anywhere. I begin to think that maybe dispatch got the wrong address. 1034 to dispatch. Dispatch, go ahead. I'm at Patch Lane. Can you confirm that this is the address? Stand by. 1034, yes, that's the correct address. Do you need backup? Negative. Appears nobody's home, but I'll update. At this point, I knock on the front door and announce myself. Officer Barkley, Police Department. No answer. All the windows were closed. I gently try the front door. Swap. 1034 to dispatch. Dispatch, go ahead. It looks like the house is abandoned. I think the 911 hang-up might have had some wires crossed. Clear me no report. 10-4. At this point, it's about 0230 hours, and I need a cup of coffee since I have another 3.5 hours left.
Damn.
I head over to the local 24-hour gas station and find 2 of my ever-so-busy coworkers standing there, fueling up on caffeine as well. They grin and ask me if I had fun responding to the old Doc's house. Clearly, I must have had a done look on my face showing the confusion I was feeling, because then he goes, "You don't know, do you?" he continues. "The old man's farmhouse belonged to Dr. Wentz. He's the guy I'm sure you've heard about. Used to do botched abortions and all sorts of inhumane procedures back in the 1800s. He's the guy all the rich went to when they had young daughters getting knocked up, or when they had special needs child, or when they had a special needs child they didn't want to keep.
Sounds fun.
He built that house himself, even named the road Patch Lane as a joke to all the patching he did for people, laughing about the old tale the guys were trying to pull over on me. I wasn't going to let these guys spook me. I finished up my shift and get some Z's, and back in I go on Saturday night. Around the same time, maybe a little later, around 0230, I get a call. Dispatch to 1034? 1034, go ahead. We got another 911 hang-up from the same number as last night. This time they stayed on the line and we could hear someone talking, but you can't make it out. Can you check it out again? Can you confirm the address again? It comes to Patch Lane. Now, I'm pretty sure the guys are getting dispatch in on some type of joke, but whatever. I still have to respond. Better safe than sorry. So I drive down the road, turn on the gravel road, park my cruiser away from the house, and check the perimeter, and go up to the front door. Still no sign of life inside. I knock on the door and announce myself. "This is Officer Berkeley with the police department." I'm about to leave, and I go to check the door handle out of pure habit, and sure as shit, the door opened.
Fuck that.
I was startled by the fact that the door opened. My right hand immediately went to my gun on the right side. I announced myself again. "Officer Berkeley, police department. Come to the front door or else I'm entering." Before entering a house, for officer safety reasons, we always get on the radio. 1034 dispatch. Dispatch, go ahead. No one appears to be home, but the front door was unlocked. I'm going to make entry and check the house. It appears abandoned, though. Do we have any backup available? 1034, all units are still on failed DUI accident. Do you want to break? Negative. I'll advise. I figured I didn't need backup breaking from a potential homicide scene for this abandoned house search. I made entry, gun drawn. I proceeded through the first floor, dodging cobwebs and stepping over dead insects and critters.
So,
I continue upstairs through the bedrooms, closet.
why?
Everywhere a person could be, I checked.
So he said it was abandoned. Abandoned. Why would you still check it? That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I'm just saying my part of you.
I work my way downstairs and check the basement. It's a pretty small basement, but it's broken into several tiny rooms. One room has a metal door with a padlock on it. The padlock needs a key to open it, and it's completely rusted shut, covered in cobwebs, and even one big black spider was guarding the lock, having made it its home. Clearly, this lock has been there for years, maybe decades. I didn't worry about it, since there was no way anyone else was in there due to how rusted this old lock was. Even the keyhole looked corroded and filled with rust and dirt. I eventually left and advised dispatch no report. I grab a cup of hot coffee around 0400 hours and catch up with one of the guys from DUI Crash and ask him what that mess of a scene looked like. He told me I'm lucky I wasn't stuck on that scene. He asked me about the Patch Lane house, and I told him it was pretty fucking creepy. But I checked it out, and it has to be crossed wires somewhere. I felt comfortable telling him it was creepy, since I knew this guy from when my dad was still on the force, and he treats me like a daughter. He said he used to get drop calls all the time from there back in the 90s, but there was actually a family living there back then. Each time he got dispatched, and they let him search the whole house. Never any problems. Just a single mom and her 2 kids minding their own business. I asked him what happened to that family, and he said nothing suspicious. They moved away after maybe 10 months or so. Definitely less than a year, and a few families moved in and out, renting the house, but ever since about the late 90s, nobody moved in. I asked him if he remembered there being a locked room in the basement, honestly not really knowing what I was expecting as a response. And his eyebrows raised, and he said, "You know what? I actually didn't remember until you asked just now." Yeah. Wow, yeah. The only reason I remember this is because the nice girl that lived there with her kids didn't have a key and couldn't get into the room, and was asking me if I knew a locksmith.
Dead bodies.
I told her I didn't really know anyone, since any time the cops needed somewhere, they just smashed the lock open. She giggled, and I remember she was a very attractive-looking girl. We both shrugged it off, finding it odd, but moved on with our shift into the early hours, with another DUI stop and a domestic violence call from a guy whose wife drank too much and decided it was a good time to confront him for cheating on her 3 years ago. Fast forward to Sunday night, back at work, and this time the call comes out right at 0300 hours. Dispatch to 1034. 1034, go ahead. Hey, we have another 911 call from Patch Lane. Are you able to go? Since I was in the middle of eating my lunch, I decided to not even go. Yeah, dispatch, I cleared that house last night. I didn't even see a landline telephone in that house. Stand by. 1034 to Sergeant Oakley. Oakley, go ahead. Hey, Sarge, did you hear this call? Do you need me to go over, or can we clear it? 1034, just drive by. No need to go in if you don't see anything, but at least drive by. Received. Show me en route. I was pissed since I didn't get to finish eating, but I did my job and drove down the gravel road. This time,
Kinda have to
the
do your
front door
job,
was
bro. You're a
wide
cop.
open,
You're gonna
and
have
I
to.
know I shut it closed the night before.
Oh, shit.
At this point, I begin to think a homeless person is inside, which is still trespassing. So I call out to dispatch. I have an open door, and I'm gonna check it out. I make entry, and this time I see someone run around the corner.
Oh, God.
My gun is drawn since I have no idea what to expect here, and I announce myself and run after them. When I turn the corner, it's just the kitchen and the door to the basement. There's no way out. I run into the basement. Nobody's fucking down there. Nobody.
Wow.
I get on the radio and ask for backup, but get no response. I make my way back up, and still nothing on the radio. I finish clearing the house and still can't find the person. I make my way out to the cruiser and use the cruiser radio, and I'm out of breath at this point. 1034 to dispatch. Go ahead. Did you hear any of my calls for backup? Negative. 1034, you need unit? No, you can disregard. I had one subject on the premises, but they're gone. I'm heading back to the station. So, of course, everyone asks me about what happened, and all I can say is that they must have ran out when they saw me. I didn't tell anyone that the direction they ran left them absolutely no way of running outside. I began to wonder if I'm going crazy. I'm off Tuesday and Wednesday nights. Getting rookie, remember? So, at this point, I just have one more night before I can rest. Monday night shift left me speechless. At roll call, everyone jokes about when I'm planning to go back to Patch Lane. I tell them they can get the call, and I'm done. Oh, 300 hours. Dispatch to 1045. 1045 is my good friend who's been to the house in the 90s. 1045, go. We got a 911 call for Patch Lane. Sarge gave the okay to just drive by and make sure no one's there. 1045, okay. Show me en route. Not even 30 seconds go by and my cell phone beeps. I have a text. Hey, I want to meet me there. Bastard. Of course, I'm not going to say no, so yeah, I go. 1035 to dispatch.
It's not going to be
you can
him,
have
isn't
me
it?
to 1045's call. 104. We show up at the same time, and this time the front door is wide open again.
Oh, no.
Awesome. We both clear the first floor, then the top floor, and make our way into the basement together. Nothing. Then we turn the corner. I see there's no lock on the metal door anywhere. We look at each other, and he said, I thought you said this was locked. And I say, it was. So he slowly opens the door, and we're hit in the face with the most horrid smell. A smell
Dead
I
bodies.
know well. The smell of death.
Called it.
We find the corpse of a young female, bloated, fresh. The body naturally bloats at about 2 to 4 days after death and traps gases. That's where the odor comes from. We call for backup and medical examiners show up on scene. They process the scene and begin to take the body away. I ask them how long has the body been there. They're the experts, not me. And the ME guys said between 3 or 4 days based on rigor mortis,
Damn.
liver mortis, and a few other medical terms I probably can't even spell. I said that's not possible because I was there a day ago and there's no way that was freshly locked. The lock was corroded, rusted, and covered in cobwebs. Nobody touched it in years. And they said, Officer Barkley, that's not our job to explain. We're just telling you that this body has been laying in this exact position in that room for between 3 to 4 days. Tomorrow will be my first night back, and I'm not sure what to expect.
Fuck that shit. Is it over?
Update.
Okay.
Thursday, August 9th, 2018. I woke up this morning to a blaring ringing coming from my nightstand. I smacked my alarm clock, but it didn't stop the noise. I finally realized, with half an eye open, it was my phone ringing. I answered. Hello? Barkley, wake the hell up. Chief wants to see you, now. Sergeant Oakley is not the voice I wanted to hear at 0800 hours this morning. I rolled my ass out of bed and began to get ready to head into the station, since I knew it was never a good sign when Chief Fox wants to see you in his office ASAP. Around 1900 hours, I walked into the station, in uniform, and headed towards Chief Fox's office. I knocked on his open door and poked my head around the corner. Chief said, Barkley, come in and shut the door.
Oh, no.
I shut the door and took a seat. Well, Barkley, you shouldn't be surprised why you're here. You got dispatched to the same goddamn house for 4 nights in a row and discover a dead body on the 4th night? And this body was there for at least 2 of the previous nights? You really fucked up, Barkley. Now I have paperwork out the ass and you need to answer some questions. What the hell?
Knew it.
How is he turning this around on me? I did my job. I followed protocol. I followed my training and I cleared the house as I was taught. Okay, Chief. What questions do you have? Walk me through your first night. Did you check the windows, the doors? Yes, I checked the windows, which were all secured, and the front door was locked. There was no other doors except for the front door. It's a very old and small farmhouse. All right. What about the second night? Windows, doors? Chief, I checked the windows and doors as my report said. The second night the door was unlocked. I followed protocol and made entry. And tell me why you didn't check the room in the basement. Well, according to Maryland vs. Bowie, I conducted a personal sweep of the home to check for any persons on the premises, since the property appeared to be abandoned. I looked in all areas that a person could potentially hide. When I got to that room, I saw that the lock was rusted, corroded, covered in cobwebs. There was no way anyone could have hidden in that room and locked themselves inside. I was not searching for a crime or illegal substances. I was only legally allowed to search for persons in that residence. I know the fucking law, Barkley. Thanks. Did you try the lock? Well, no. I could see that it would not have opened. Did you think to try to call one of your male officers to try to open the lock? Chief, the reason I didn't try to open it wasn't because I thought I was too weak. I didn't try to open it because I could tell that it hadn't been touched in decades. Well, thanks to your expertise in locks and corrosion, the entire case is fucked up, thanks to you. I'm gonna be keeping a close eye on it.
Wow.
Chief Fox,
What
I
an
followed
asshole.
all of our department procedures and stayed within the law. If you feel I handled these calls improperly, then please provide me the additional training and procedures that would guide me to how I should have handled it. Nobody likes a smart-ass, Barkley. Go start your shift. You have a lot of follow-ups to do now for this case, and you can't be doing that shit at night. What an asshole. I knew from the day council hired me that he hated me. Yeah, and as I said, it's a small town, so the chief tends to do what city council tells him to do. Lucky for me, city council was eager to hire another female officer, but I don't think Fox was on board with their idea. I'm used to sexism in these small towns, but I tolerated it since my fellow patrol officers, for the most part, don't share the chief's criticism. I decided to follow up with the medical examiner's office to see what information they had from the autopsy and the crime scene, since we didn't seem to have a copy of their report at our station.
Why?
I called the chief medical examiner. Hey, it's Officer Barkley from the Patch Lane case. Did you guys finish up the autopsy report? Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't see a copy here at the station. Can you send it over? I'm pretty busy right now. Plus, that's my assistant's job. Alright, how about I swing by and pick it up? You can do whatever your little heart desires. The chief medical examiner wasn't exactly eager to help, but I grabbed my cruiser's keys and headed over to the lab. The assistant was a young girl, looked fresh out of college, and greeted me with a smile. Hello, officer. How can I help you? I asked her for the ME's report from Patch Lane. She proceeded to enter some letters into her computer, then hit print. She handed me a 3-page document, so I asked, Aren't there more pages? She responded, Nope, that's it. I found this odd, considering most medical autopsy reports for a homicide case were well over 20 or 30 pages.
Man.
I took a seat to look over the report, and I guess my confusion and anger showed on my face, since the receptionist asked if there was a problem. As I reviewed the autopsy report, I saw that for the hair color, which was clearly long and blonde, they listed brunette, and for eye color, they listed undetermined. I wish this was the end of this shit show, but the entire report seemed to be either wrong or just incomplete. The manner of death was listed as homicide, but the cause of death was listed as undetermined. So what the hell? Isn't it their job to determine the cause of death? I marched over to the chief medical examiner's office and knocked twice before walking in. Chief, is this just a skeleton report from the Patch Lane incident? I held up the 3-page document in my hand to show him. A skeleton report is a basic report cops will fill out prior to the end of shift, and then the next day, with fresh eyes, they fill in the gaps. However, with a homicide case, and being that it was now over 48 hours later, I didn't understand why they would only have a skeleton report. Nope, that's the finished report, sweetheart. I hate when old creepy men call me sweetheart.
Yeah, it doesn't
Well,
sound,
why is there no cause of death
creepy.
listed? Because, thanks to you, the body sat in a locked room for 3 days and left us barely any evidence to work with. Why the hell is everyone blaming me for this? Then can you explain why the hair color was wrong and about half these details are listed as undetermined? If you think you can do better, go right ahead. I asked to go see the body. and I wanted to make sure I wasn't just making shit up in my own head. Shockingly, he agreed, took me over to the freezer. Again, it's a small town, so the morgue only had about 5 bodies in the freezer. I found our Jane Doe from Patch Lane and zipped open the bag. I immediately noticed her blonde hair. I knew I wasn't crazy. I grabbed some latex gloves and began to go through her pockets to look for identification, since clearly the ME's office decided it was undetermined if she had items in her pocket. I found a
Why?
receipt from a gas
Isn't that
station
the first thing
for
they're
10
supposed to
gallons
do?
of gas, priced at $1.12 per gallon. I actually felt jealous of this dead woman, wondering where she found to get gas that cheap. Then, I looked up at the top of the receipt and saw the date stamp of 10/20/1998.
What?
Why the hell would she keep a receipt that old? I flipped the receipt over and saw there was some type of writing, like in pencil, but I couldn't make it out. I put the receipt in a baggie and decided I was going to send it out to the PA State Lab for further testing to see if they could decipher what was written. The more I looked at her, I also noticed that she was wearing bleached jeans with a multicolored sweatshirt, like what my mom used to dress me in when I was younger. I left the freezer since I could barely feel my own fingertips, and I asked the chief medical examiner if he had copies of their attempts to identify the body, i.e. dental moldings, fingerprints, DNA tests, etc. He handed me over a stack of some papers and said, "Good luck." I asked, "Why are there only 6 fingerprints? Why didn't you do all 10 like normal?" He responded, "Well, why didn't you check the lock on the door while you were there 3 days ago?
Fine,
I don't
bitch.
tell you how to do your job, so why the hell are you going to tell me how to do mine?" Asshole. He's usually more thorough than this. I have no idea why it feels like I'm the only one even trying to solve this case anymore. I fingerprinted all 10 of our Jane Doe's fingerprints and ran them through my mobile AFIS, or Automated Fingerprint Identification System. I was pleasantly surprised to see that I got a hit, so I clicked See More. My screen read, Michelle Klein, date of birth 07/05/1972, date of death 10/20/1998. What the hell?
He said 4 to 3 days that we found him. How the hell? That don't make no sense.
Update. Monday, August 13th, 2018. I woke up Friday evening, groggy, with a pounding headache. I'm beginning to think the bottle of wine I finished Thursday night wasn't such a good idea. That's the thing with cops. When we come across horrible scenes that we can't rationalize or explain, whether it be murdered children, abusive husbands, finding a 20-year dead body, we turn to alcohol. Me, personally, I turned to a nice dark Merlot.
Oui.
I couldn't stop wondering how the hell that body could have died 20 years ago. It was fresh. I could still smell it. It made absolutely no sense. I grabbed my keys with my left hand as I wedged my right-hand fingers between my duty belt and uniform belt to get my last belt keeper snapped in place before running out the door to make it to roll call on time. While driving to the station, all I could think about was how there was no way my mobile AFIS was correct. I decided as soon as roll call was over, I was going to grab a different AFIS from Batcave, the not-so-creative name we call the room with all of our tools, gadgets, and weapons, and scan my Jane Doe's fingerprints again. As soon as roll call was over, I ran upstairs and grabbed Jane Doe's fingerprints from the case file. Next, I grabbed one of the newer AFIS devices and scanned Jane Doe's fingerprints. It was running slow, but it seemed to be thinking. The screen read, Processing. 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 Then after what felt like an eternity, but in reality was maybe 3 minutes, and I got the message. System is timed out. Failed attempt.
Sweet.
Weird. This has never happened to me before. I decided to try it again.
Maybe it's an old system.
This time I can actually feel my heart start to thud louder and louder as I waited for the results. Processing. Processing. No results found. What the hell? Are you fucking kidding me? This is the response I'm used to seeing when I scan a suspect's fingerprints who has never been arrested before. I didn't tell anyone about my previous Michelle Klein results because it didn't make any sense to me. I was worried something exactly like this would happen, and I would look like the crazy one. Before I could jump on one of the computers to start doing some digging, I heard the tone drop. The tone is the loud, high-pitched screaming tone that makes
yeah.
every cop's heart skip a beat. Dispatch to all units. We just received call for gunshots fired near the McDonald's. The caller is unsure where the shooting occurred, but heard 3 gunshots followed by screeching tires and someone yelling. I ran to my cruiser, flipped the switch to turn on my lights and siren, and raced to the scene. We circulated the area for over an hour with no results. But finally, dispatch got back on the air. Dispatch to all units. We just received a call from the hospital. They have a gunshot wound patient and would like officers to respond. Sergeant Oakley was kind enough to offer the rookies assistance. And just like that, I spent the entire rest of my shift sitting at a hospital, waiting for the victim to come out of surgery so I could question him. I spent all Friday night thinking about our Jane Doe case and trying to find answers. But the more I thought about the case, the more questions I had. When I returned to work Saturday, I decided I wanted to return to Patch Lane to try to get some closure to some of the unanswered questions. After everything that happened, I realized it would be best for me not to go alone. I texted my friend Tim, he's batch number 1045, who responded last time with me, and asked if he would be willing to head back over to Patch Lane with me under the radar. He agreed, and we both advised dispatch to hold us out, doing foot patrol around the park. This is an area we had a lot of problems at night with underage drinking and smoking.
Makes sense.
I rolled my cruiser to a stop and shut off the engine. Tim slowly forced himself out of the cruiser, muttering about his bad back. Barkley, what are we even looking for back here? Anything, Tim. I don't think the ME's office processed the scene properly based on how they handled the body. What are you talking about? Shit. I didn't tell him about my little visit to the ME's office. Nothing. Let's just start out and do a full sweep of the perimeter.
You gotta tell me
I wasn't really sure what I was even expecting. There was still police tape across the front door, and with a fire red sticker on the seal of the doorway stamped "Do Not Enter." I leaned in to check the door handle and make sure it was locked. As I reached down, I heard a loud, shrill scream come from immediately behind me.
The hell?
I jumped up and turned around and shined my flashlight straight ahead. There's nobody there. I heard a much softer, quieter squeal come from ground level. I redirected my light downward. Sitting in front of me was a Halloween black cat.
Oh yeah,
Jesus Christ, cat! The hell are you screaming at me for?
Now, bitch.
Now that she had my attention, she came up to me and wrapped her body around my leg, purring. I proceeded to check the rest of the windows and worked my way to the rear of the house, towards Tim. Haley, yeah, I named her, followed me and began frantically meowing at me the closer I got to the rear of the house. Her screaming got so bad I had to throw her some crackers from my pocket just to distract her. It worked. I noticed a shadow in the upper level window, but couldn't make out what it was. I began taking steps backwards to get a closer look through the upper level window, all while shining my flashlight upward. By about the 7th or 8th step back, I felt something hard and sharp whacking the back of my ankle and brought me to my knees. Tim came running over, since this time I was the one doing the yelling. He shined his light down to make sure I was okay. Thank God there was no blood. I seemed to be fine. I bent over to see what it was that I felt go into my ankle. I felt a rusted, sharp chunk of metal. It was an old root cellar door handle. Root cellars are not uncommon on these old farms. It was a way for farmers to store their harvest over the long winter months when refrigeration was non-existent.
Yep.
What the hell is that? Tim asked. It's a root cellar door, I told him. We need to see what's down there. We opened the door, and I used my ASP baton to wrap all the spider webs around it and clear a path for us. Barkley, you're fucking going first. I shined my light down and began going down one step at a time. I went slowly so as not to fall through one of these old wooden stairs. We walked down what could only be described as a tunnel for only about 10 seconds before we reached a small set of stairs. There were about 4 steps that led up to a smaller hatch, almost. It's like an attic door, one that you must crawl through without a ladder. I reached up and opened the hatch. I popped my head up and shined my light around. There was a large rug over the hatch opening. Tim helped me push it out of the way. Once we could finally see in the room, I recognized it. It was the room where we found Jane Doe. Tim grabbed my arm and convinced me we need to leave because this house was still an active crime scene and we couldn't go walking around inside. we finally figured out how the body got in that room, I knew I wasn't crazy. There was no way anyone had touched that lock on the outside. We turned around and retraced our steps, careful not to disturb anything. Along the way, I tried to look for evidence, but it was too dark. It was an area that would be better examined during daylight. We returned to our cruisers and calmed our nerves over a long smoke break, despite the fact that I'm not even a smoker. I got home and passed out, went back into work on Sunday. One thing I love about working the weekends is that there's no brass at the station when I go into work. However, this day was different. As soon as I walked into the station, I overheard my coworkers talking about some suits that were up in Chief's office. Sergeant Oakley saw me and immediately snapped his fingers at me. "Barkley, get over here. Chief got called in today because of a surprise visit from some suits. He wants you in his office immediately."
Oh, God.
I headed upstairs to the chief's office, a little surprised that the feds were getting involved in this case. I began to wonder if the FBI got involved because of the potential serial killer. My thoughts were quickly interrupted by Chief Fox. "Barkley, get your ass in here." Oh, the wonderful sound of his voice. "Hello, Chief. How can I help?" "Barkley, the marshals got called in to help with this case." U.S. Marshals? They
Damn.
usually go after fugitives. Do they think fugitives did this to our Jane Doe? Do they think our Jane Doe is a fugitive? My mind is going 100 miles per minute. Chief Fox then told me I had to sit down with him and answer any and all questions they had. I took a seat and walked them through my past week, explaining the 911 hang-ups and finding the body. I wasn't planning on giving them any details about the fingerprints, Michelle Klein, or the secret door, but they asked me something that sparked my interest. "Miss Barkley, are you familiar with the U.S. Marshals Witness Protection Program?"
Yeah. Yes, I am. And I fell again. Oh, what the fuck? Okay. Oh, shit.
Update, Tuesday, August 14th, 2018. My conversation with the U.S. Marshals left me speechless. It seemed like every time a question was answered, it created 10 more. My Jane Doe was in the Witness Protection Program.
Oh.
Why? Why would she risk her life coming back here? Who wanted to kill her? The U.S. Marshals were extremely professional, polished, and appeared as though they wanted to help. They weren't willing to divulge any specifics or details of why Jane Doe was put in the program or why she may have been killed.
Yeah, because they're not
They
allowed
did
to
tell
do
me that she was a key witness to a very high-profile case years ago involving the ATF. They also admitted that Michelle Klein was her real name. However, they faked her death upon entry of the protection program.
Okay.
Whenever I ran her fingerprints through AFIS, it triggered an alert in their system, and that's how they came to be standing in front of me.
Oh.
Before I could ask any questions, they shook my hand and thanked me for my time.
Makes sense.
They walked out the door before I could even get a Y out of my mouth. Who killed Michelle Klein? Who kept calling 911? What did this poor woman get herself into? Why was there a receipt in her pocket from 20 years ago? I finished up the rest of my shift, completing paperwork, which I eventually faxed over to the suits. I went home early Monday morning and had 2 glasses of wine before rolling into bed by 0500 hours. Don't be mistaken. It's not that I didn't want to drink the entire bottle again, but I was just too tired. Monday evening, I headed back towards the station for roll call, which started at 1700 hours. Sergeant Oakley read and summarized aloud the prior shift's reports before releasing us to hit the road. Before I can finish racking my cruiser, dispatch calls. "Dispatch to 1034. 1034, go ahead." 1034, we got a call from a senior citizen who is currently at her neighbor's house. She is a medical alert customer and oxygen dependent. Her phone lines are currently not working and is requesting to speak with an officer. 1034, show me en route. Although there isn't much for an officer to do on calls such as this, we are obligated to respond if someone calls and requests to see an officer. I drive down the long country road towards the caller and can't help but glance to my right as I pass the Patch Lane sign. I arrive on the scene and meet with the sweetest old woman who reminded me very much of my own grandmother. She explained to me that she walked to her neighbor's house and called the phone company about her phones not working, but just wanted an officer to keep her company until her phones were fixed, since she was oxygen dependent. She also shared that she had already had more than one fall in her home and used her medical alert. I told her that I was happy to wait with her. She lived in an older farmhouse. There are many of those in this area.
Sorry, I like that.
And had one of the prettiest farmlands I've seen in a while. She had her garden filled with colorful flowers and cute lawn ornaments throughout. She caught me staring and said, "Oh yes, my daughter comes by every week to help me keep my garden looking so pretty. Her husband mows the lawn for me and she tends to my flowers." I was shocked to see the local phone company drive down the gravel road within 30 minutes of my arrival. I went outside to greet the technician and explain the problem. He introduced himself as Tom and asked me where the box was located. As quickly as I could repeat the question in my head, I heard the older woman yell from the porch, "It's behind the shed!" I followed Tom behind the shed, and about 20 yards away I saw a large 3-foot square pole sticking out of the ground. Tom walked over to it and began reaching on his belt for some tools. "What is that?" I asked. "Oh, this is the box that connects her telephone line, as well as her neighbor's lines, to the central telephone system. I'm going to see if there's a problem with the wires making the connections." He attempted to open the hinge. No luck. These things usually go months or maybe years without being opened and just take a little TLC to open. There we go. The front face opened after just a little elbow grease was put into it. I saw several wires and some labels next to the wires containing a series of numbers. So explain to me what's going on here," I asked. "Well, these boxes were put here way before your time. They had to install these when landlines first became a thing. You see these wires and numbers after them? They show to which address each wire is associated. I noticed a loose wire hanging from the bottom with no label, and this one appeared to have a female attachment on the end of it. I asked, "And what is that wire made to connect to?" "Oh, well, that's so we can plug our phones into it and make calls to test the lines." "Wait, what? You can carry a phone in your pocket and plug it in and make a phone call from the box?" Tom laughed and explained, "Well, it isn't exactly that simple. You need a certain type of phone, but yeah, I guess it's kind of like that."
Oh, sweet.
"What phone number would show up when you call someone from the box?" "Whichever neighbor's line you selected up here." As he motioned to the labels and switches, it was then that I had my light bulb moment. What if my 911 hang-ups at Patch Lane were being done at one of these boxes?
Oh.
I asked. "So, if the house had no electricity, no phone, could it still show up as the origin of the phone call if someone called from a box?" Tom paused for a moment to think about it and responded, "I guess. Yeah, I mean, that's possible, as long as the telephone line has not been reassigned to another person."
Dang.
Tom finished up his work and was able to get the phones working again. I left the scene within an hour, so it was still light outside. I decided to head back to Patch Lane in the daylight to see if I could find one of these landline telephone poles. I arrived unseen and began walking through the acreage. After about 20 minutes I found it. I leaned over and wrapped my 2 fingers inside the front panel and pulled. The door opened with ease. Much unlike the last box I had watched Tom open, somebody had opened this box recently.
Oh, damn.
But who? As I started to head back towards my cruiser, I heard screaming. "God damn it, Haley!" I turned around and saw Haley sitting on the front porch. This time, she looked in pain. She was holding her front paw in the air and kept licking it, screaming in pain. I got close to her and saw her paw looked incredibly swollen. I'm an animal lover, so I decided to wrap her in an old uniform shirt I had in my truck and set her in my cruiser. I grabbed my phone from my front vest pocket and Googled local veterinarians. I was pretty damn surprised to see my family's old vet was showing up as still open and in business. We had a black lab growing up that I swear was the most intelligent dog. Dr. Demeyers was just down the road and open until 8 p.m., or 2000 hours as I interpreted it. I glanced at my watch and saw that it was already 1940 hours, so I rushed down the road to the vet. Dr. Demeyer immediately took us in and began examining her paw. I couldn't believe this guy was still alive, let alone still working.
That's fucking move.
I remembered him being old when I was a kid.
Wow.
He has to be in his 80s now. My dad used to always take our dog to him. I remember he would call Dr. Demeyers the mayor, because he knew everyone in town. He knew everything about them. For as much as my dog hated the vet, I swear my dad loved going there to shoot the shit with Dr. Demeyers. "So, where did you find this cat, officer?" "Down on Patch Lane, at an abandoned farmhouse. She was sitting on the front porch crying in pain. I just couldn't leave her there." Yeah, I haven't heard about Patch Lane in quite a while." "Oh, are you familiar with that house?" I asked. "Well, I don't know if I would say that. I just remember the stories that circulated the town back then." He stopped to write down some notes in his chart. He looked up and said, That was a beautiful farm. I remember taking care of the cows in the old Wentz farm when the Goods lived there. Did you know the guy that lived there after the Goods passed? Oh, I never knew him. I only heard many stories. What stories? Well, the fellow was a jack of all trades, you could say. He dipped his hands into just about every illegal scheme you could think of.
Damn.
I heard rumors he had ties to the mafia. The guy was blonde-haired, blue eyes, and yet supposedly was Italian. Now, you explain that to me, officer. I never did understand it, but I suspect he was giving something or providing something to them. He was a very odd character. I never heard about the owner of Patch Lane until just now. Where's he now? I asked. Oh, he left town quite a few years ago. Never did see him again. Oh well. Anywho, here's some penicillin you're gonna have to give to Haley for the next 5 days. This will help clear up her abscess to make sure the infection doesn't get any worse. If it does get worse, call my office. Wait, what the hell? I'm gonna have to give her medicine? So now I have a cat? No, I'm more of a dog person, but I can't stomach the idea of dropping her off at the local shelter.
Don't you do it.
On my way home, I stopped at a local mart and picked up a litter box, some cat litter, and cat food. At least cats are lower maintenance and more independent than dogs.
Exactly.
Haley decided to snuggle up next to me for the night. And I'll admit, it was the best I'd slept in 8 months.
See?
I woke up Tuesday morning and decided to make it a productive day, despite the fact that it's my day off from work and I'm exhausted. I began to think of who would have more information on Patch Lane or Michelle Klein. All of my thoughts came back to the same person. My dad. He was on the force back in the 90s. Hell, he was on the force even back in the 80s and 70s. I drove over to his house and pulled into his driveway. I saw the rose bush in bloom in front of his house, and it instantly reminded me of my mom. She passed away a few years back, but every time I go to my dad's, I find pieces of her everywhere, such as the rose bush that she had planted. I welcomed myself inside and was greeted with the best bear hug. After feeding me and fueling me with his famous super secret recipe coffee, we sat down. Dad, have you ever been to the house on Patch Lane? Oh wow. Yeah, I have. Many years ago. Really? What were you there for? The ATF needed a couple of uniformed officers to assist them with gathering evidence for the case. They busted the owner of the place for smuggling illegal guns, and he had them stored in the shed on the farm. I've been researching this place for over a week. I've never heard of an ATF raid. Well, that's because it was confidential. We never wrote a police report on the incident. It was solely documented on the federal level, and they were very good about keeping it out of the media.
They have to, really.
We didn't have space phones back then, so it was much easier to keep this under wraps.
Makes sense.
Do you know what happened to the owner? Who was he? His name was John. No, it was Joseph. Yeah, Joseph Miller, I believe. It was similar to Miller, but not quite Miller. What happened to him? Right. Well, he had an inside mole with the police department and caught wind of the raid. He flew the coop and never really got an update since then. I began to wonder why Tim didn't tell me any of this. Dad, I've been dispatched to Patch Lane several times with Tim, and he didn't tell me any of this. Do you know why he wouldn't tell me about it? Well, Tim didn't join the department until about 97, maybe 98. This all happened around 95, about 2 years before then.
Oh, shit.
Well, that made me feel a little bit better. I felt guilty for insinuating that I was questioning Tim. My dad began to ask me questions about my own calls to Patch Lane, but I made the dash to the front door and told him I had to get going because of Haley, and simply told him that I was taking in a stray who was still hailing. I hadn't heard back from PA State Lab yet, so I called them to get an update on what was written on the back of the receipt I found in Michelle's pocket. A receptionist answered the phone. State Forensics Department, hello, this is Officer Barkley, following up on case number 2018. I wanted to check the status of my evidence. The receptionist transferred me. A male answered. Hello, Officer Barkley. Sorry, we've been so busy I didn't get a chance to call you sooner. We were successful in extracting the writing on the back of the receipt you provided to us. It read L34-R16-L8.
Is that coordinates?
What does that even read? I can't say for sure what this means, but in my personal opinion, this definitely looks like a combination to a safe.
Oh, okay, well. safe. Cool.
Update. Wednesday,
Sweet.
August 15th, 2018. I woke up early Tuesday morning and threw some food in a bowl for Haley before racing out of my house. Don't worry, Haley. Mom will be back later. She meowed goodbye in response,
that's not a girl voice.
brushed along my leg, and trotted over to the couch to curl up and wait for my return. It's so damn hard to leave her now. She filled a void in my heart I didn't know existed. I headed over to my dad's. I didn't call him ahead of time since he's just down the road and I stop in all the time. As I was pulling up, I saw Tim's truck parked in my dad's driveway.
Ah, shit.
Not very surprised since they're good friends and today is Jim's day off as well. So they tend to catch up on Tuesdays or Wednesdays over a cigar on the back deck. I was actually really glad Tim was there because I had some more questions I wanted to run by him as well. My dad greeted me with his famous bear hug, and Tim gave me a nod of the head and smiled. How's it going? Hey, I'm actually really glad you guys are both here. I wanted to ask you both about Patch Lane. Tim chimed in. Jesus, see what I'm talking about? Your girl's obsessed with the case now. Chip off the old block, am I right? My dad laughed. Oh, I remember those days obsessing over cases. I gotta say, retirement is treating me well. I welcome myself back into the conversation. Okay, well, maybe there's a reason to be obsessed. I just talked to the state's forensic lab, and it looked like Michelle had written a code to a safe on the back of that receipt that she had in her pocket. I think there's a safe somewhere on Patch Lane. It could have some answers for me. Tim took a long inhale of his cigar, held it, and slowly released. You're gonna make me go back there, aren't you?
Yup.
I flashed him a smile and offered, well, I could go alone. Tim agreed, and my dad laughed at him and remarked, Yeah, she does that shit to me too, Tim. Good luck with that. I added, Tim, I also wanted to ask you about the 911 hang-ups you used to respond to back when you were a rookie. What else do you remember about the tenant? Tim thought for a moment and replied, Well, she's certainly a pretty young girl. She had 2 very young children. Neither could talk yet, so I bet they were under 2. She looked young for herself. I would suspect that she was maybe around 20 years old, if that. She had that baby face, you know? She was very cautious about the house and locked the door in the basement. Most people hated when cops showed up, but she always seemed, I don't know, relieved. She would mention how big that house was, and how she always felt like someone was watching her.
Oh, okay.
Even the tenants after her made similar comments. I always chalked it up to being the history of the Wentz farm, you know? Is there any chance that the woman we found in the basement was the same girl that lived there? I don't know why it would be. I always thought she moved somewhere else, because right after she left, the new tenant came in. I guess I don't know exactly what happened to her. Do you remember her name? Oh my god, I'm awful with names. I'll never forget her face, but I can't remember names. You know that. That's why I immediately write down every person's name that we interview. I can't even check anywhere since I never took a report for checking the house. Could her name have been Michelle Klein? And I turned to my dad. Dad, do you know about the tenant in the house in the late 90s? He looked nervously down at his cigarette and took a short puff. Well, I remember all the tenants were similar. What do you mean? They looked similar. Dad, this is important. Just tell me what you're trying to spit out. He took a deep breath. Well, all the tenants were young, attractive women. They were mostly blonde from out of town. The type of girls that your mother would not have likely stopping to talk to at the grocery store. Wait, you're saying they were prostitutes?
Oh.
No, I just mean they were young, pretty, kind of ditzy, you know? I wasn't sure what to make of this information, but I let Tim finish his cigar before we headed into the station. We were scheduled off for Tuesday, but given this new information, I requested and was granted to come in and work overtime to follow up. I remember Tim used to go to the beach and come back with old coins and whatnot he would find using his metal detector. I asked him if he could bring his metal detector to Patch Lane with him this evening to help us find the safe. After we broke from roll call, we immediately headed to Patch Lane. The scene was done being processed, so we walked through the front door. We went to the upstairs master bedroom and tried every floorboard, looking for where a safe could have been hidden. We were unsuccessful. We mutually decided to try the basement before the rest of the house. We worked our way into the room where we found Michelle's body. There are some scenes you just won't forget, and that was one of them.
Yeah, dead body,
The body
bro.
was purple, swollen, and unrecognizable as human. The only way I even identified her as a young woman was based on the long blonde hair and clothing she had on. Tim ran his metal detector along the cement wall, and we heard. Tim continued to move it along the left.
Hell yeah.
We looked at each other for a moment before he dropped his metal detector, and we grabbed at the wall. I don't know what we were grabbing at, but we kept feeling along the wall. As we pushed along the wall, a block moved. I grabbed my knife from my pocket and Tim grabbed his. We both shoved our knives against the cement brick and eased it from the wall. And there it was. The safe. It was an old-fashioned turn dial lock, like the kind I used on my high school locker. Drawing on my memory, I cleared the lock before trying the combination. I spun it to the left, stopping at 34, spun it 2 times to the right, stopping at 16, spun it back to the left, and stopped at 8. I went to open the door. Tim's eyes and mine locked on the safe, and then I heard another. But it wasn't like the unlocking of a safe. This was familiar. It was the cocking of a revolver.
Oh
I
shit.
turned around and was faced with the barrel of a gun. Well, well, well. You pigs just can't stay away from my house. He had blonde hair, while the gray was taking over, and piercing blue eyes. You're as bad as that bitch that couldn't keep her mouth shut. You know, I let her live here because she appeared cute and dumb. The curiosity is what got her killed, just like I'm about to do to you two.
Ah!
The problem with facing a gun is that no matter how fast I can grab my gun, he would have been able to pull his trigger faster.
Yeah,
However,
no shit.
there are other options. I slowly walked towards our killer, hands in the air, leveled with my shoulders, and asked, "You're Joseph, aren't you?" "Yeah, you're dead." As he finished his sentence, my nose was nearly touching the barrel of his gun. I grabbed the barrel and twisting it to his right, making a full 360-degree circle. I heard his pointer finger snap as it got tangled in the trigger and broke.
Oh.
I had his gun and pointed it right back at him.
Owie.
"Get on the fucking ground!" He slowly raised his hands in the air and got on his right knee, and then on his left. Tim ran behind Joseph and placed him in handcuffs. Once the scene was under control, we called for backup. As officers arrived on the scene, so did the suits. The 2 suits from earlier in the week came down, and Tim and I recounted the evening's events. It was at this point that I realized I still didn't get to see what was inside the safe. I walked over and opened the door, and I grabbed a handful of papers and pulled them out. They were photographs. And Tim instantly said, "That's her. That was the girl." Like I said, I never forget a face. Just names. The suits looked at him and said, "That's Michelle Klein, your body and our witness." I took a deep inhale and released it with a long sigh. "Now, can you please tell us what the hell went on here?" The suits looked at each other, and the older one nodded. "All right. Mr. Joseph Muller here was into some deep shit. Most predominantly, he ran illegal guns and sold them to some big names, including the Mafia. The ATF thought they got everything during their raid a few years ago, but there were so many hidden passages, tunnels, and root cellars throughout the property and land that he kept hiding them somewhere new. Trust us, if you knew about the tunnels and passages you're literally standing on right now, you'd have nightmares for years." The suit took a sip of his coffee and continued. He used the tenants as a cover-up, and targeted tenants he thought wouldn't ask any questions and be fine with sending checks addressed to cash to a P.O. box as a monthly rent. What he didn't expect was for Michelle Klein to start asking questions and go digging in this house. She stumbled across one of his root cellars where he stored guns and called the feds immediately. She didn't know if she could trust the local police at that point and went straight to the ATF. ATF contacted us and said they knew Muller and knew that if he found out she knew, then she would be dead. So they sent her to us to protect her. Part of her protection meant that we needed to fake her death so that Muller wouldn't be suspicious and go looking for her. She refused initially, but when we explained to her that her children's lives were at risk too, she agreed. He looked towards the safe and continued. "It looks like she used the safe here to store old family photographs and their birth certificates as proof of their existence. We told her she had to leave all this behind and she couldn't take any evidence of her previous life or her children. This all happened on October 20th, 1998. It looks like she wrote down the safe code on the first piece of paper she could find and kept it after all these years. We received notification about 2 weeks ago that her son was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh.
Goddamn, cancer. The kid was only 22 years old and had a brain tumor. She kept on telling us she wanted to go see him, and we explained to her why it wasn't possible, and we even told her that he probably wouldn't recognize her. It looks like she did her best to try to look like she did 20 years ago, including her clothing, so he would recognize her. She probably wanted to grab these photos to show him, to prove that she was his mother, and jog his memory. When she was here, Joseph must have seen her from one of his tree stands and wanted to silence her. She was the only witness willing to go forward with the testimony. We could just never catch him after all these years. I responded, "Well, I hope the entire case can be closed now." The suits responded, "Yeah, I don't think you should be getting any more 911 hang-ups from that house." I processed what they had just said and asked, "Yeah, wait, who was the one making those calls then?" And they responded, We can't disclose that information. But you can think of them as a good Samaritan who had eyes everywhere and wanted to see justice done. We headed back to the station, where I started the never-ending paperwork process. Now that we were more secluded, I decided to tell him about my experience at the medical examiner's office. I began to think that he was involved, and it was something they needed to know. He stopped me and said, "Oh, this is actually something the ME wanted to talk to you about himself. Hold on." The suit came back with the ME, and he extended his hand to shake mine. I was confused by the gesture, but shook his hand. "Officer Barkley, I wanted to say what a fantastic job you did on this case. I also want to apologize in person for how I acted and how I handled this case.
Yeah, bitch.
I received an anonymous threat that if I performed an autopsy or did anything at all with the body, my family is going to be killed.
Oh, okay.
They even knew my daughter's school and her schedule. I'm so sorry. I was afraid to go to the authorities out of fear of my family. I'm so glad you stuck to your guns and saw this case through." Dispatch interrupted. "Dispatch to 1034. 1034, go ahead. Are you available to respond to a 911 hang-up?" "Affirmative. What's the address?"
God damn, bro. Ooh, that was pretty good. Like, not even gonna lie, that was long as hell, but that was pretty good. I really hope you guys enjoyed this, because I did. I was playing Doom Eternal while I was doing it, and you could have tell because I was saying that a lot. I was dying a lot as well, so it was great. You guys should really play Doom Eternal. It's, oh my god, dude, it's so good. I mean, like, oh, I can't even explain how good it is, but you guys need to play it. And it's $60, but I think it's worth every penny that you have because this game is so good. To me, I think this game is amazing. It did a really good job at this, and I know I haven't posted in a while, and I'm hopefully gonna post tomorrow. And this is the first video since the other one, and there's been like 4 cases here now because the coronavirus. 4 of them, I think, already. It's made it here. So yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. I think they're all gonna put us in our houses and fucking. It sucks, but at least I get to still make videos and play video games, right? It's the only thing you can really do now. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, cause I did, and I'll see you all later. Bye bye.